This is The Roadmap with Lee Heisman.
Hello everyone, welcome to The Roadmap, exclusively here on ASBN.com. I'm Lee Heisman, and every week we bring you some of the brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, and business owners who are climbing the ladder, scaling their businesses, and thinking about how one day to exit stage left. This week on The Roadmap, I'm joined by a special guest and a good friend of mine, Scott Woodall. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you, Lee.
Scott, I used to introduce you as the owner of these businesses, but now you are the previous owner of Woodall Broome and ACRS.
That's correct.
We talk about Woodall Broome and ACRS, and I want to get into something that's a little bit unique. This is a private investigative firm that you grew and started and eventually sold. Private investigative firms, they seem very sexy. Is it all it's wrapped up to be?
You know, my firm's a little bit different. My firm handled insurance investigations, so it was workers' comp, liability, med malpractice defense. So, no.
It's not that. It's not all I see on TV.
No, sir. It's not what you see on TV.
Fair. So, what I found interesting is you kind of, when people play blackjack in Vegas, they can split their cards, double down. And that's kind of what you did with these two businesses. Talk a little bit about Woodall Broome and ACRS. They started together, but then you split them.
Well, Woodall Broome, we just started our 29th year in business. And ACRS was something that kind of landed on our lap about 15 years ago. The company specialized mainly in negotiating large hospital bills for workers' comp clients. And we made our money by how much money we could save on those hospital bills and getting a percentage. So it kind of landed on our lap by accident 15 years ago. It has nothing to do with investigations. And 7 years ago, we decided to break it off into its own entity so we could grow the business outside of the footprint of Woodall Broome.
So here's what's interesting. You are the perfect guest for the roadmap because we talk about scaling, growing a business, and eventually, like ESL, exiting stage left, and you've done just that.
Yes.
I know the story, but tell our viewers, what prompted this decision to say, I'm going to sell my businesses?
Yeah. So, as you said, you know the story. Almost 2 years ago, I had an extremely near-fatal motorcycle accident in Hawaii, and I had been the CEO of both of these companies. They're small businesses. We had about 75 employees total, and after 27 years at Woodall Broome, I have employees who have been with the company at least a half a dozen over 20 years. And after my accident and almost not surviving, not only my family, but a lot of my employees and staff said, what would have happened if you wouldn't have survived? And there was touch and go for a long time. And I realized at my age, maybe it's time I start thinking about what's best for my employees and my family. 3 days after my accident, I'm laying in the hospital and I actually get a phone call from a large national private investigative agency asking me if I was interested in selling. And it kind of clicked that maybe this is time for me to look at an exit.
Well, first off, you say for your age, you look great for your age.
Thank you.
I know what it is, but I won't say it for the audience out there. But, for people that say, I want to grow this business, not everybody has the opportunity where someone comes to them to buy it,
Correct.
or they might be a right time for them. Talk a little about the process, because it seems a little overwhelming. When you sell a business, is it like selling a car or selling a house, or is it much more detailed?
This was very detailed. First of all, I'd received phone calls over the years about people interested in buying my business. And I'll tell you what I tell everybody. Everything I have is for sale, no matter what it is. My wife and kids are for sale. and depending, if the price is right, and depending on their attitudes, could offer you a 2-for-1 deal. But I've never really entertained that idea because I wasn't ready. And I've also had brokers firms come to me, and the ones that I've looked at and entertained, even talking to them, the fact of the matter is I didn't like anything they had to say. It's a large amount of money, either up front or to evaluate the company. They want 20 to 30%, 25 to 30%, and it didn't make any sense to me. And I was fortunate to where when this company approached me, they came to me. And the evaluation, I was able to get a really good evaluation of my company. Actually turned out to be 3 times more than what I actually thought in my head the company was worth. And the company that purchased me was actually bought by a private equity company several years before, but it's a large national investigative firm. And we did an NDA. That NDA turned into a letter of intent. And they came back and offered me to the penny exactly what my CPA told me that my company was worth. And that process went pretty simple.
So a lot of people, you talk about what you think your company's worth. As you said, you were offered 3 times what you actually thought your company was worth. Is a starting point for listeners and viewers out there to say, hey, maybe you find an evaluative company, your accountant, someone you can look into to say, do a business evaluation to give me an idea of what the value of my business is.
Yeah, so my issue is both of my companies are service-oriented businesses. And I figured if I'm gone and other people are gone, there's nothing to sell. I never really thought I had much to sell in a business. And I looked at a bank to do an evaluation. They wanted 18 to 22 grand. If I was looking at a brokerage firm, they wanted a lot of money to do an evaluation. And I was fortunate the CPA firm that I've had for 20 years, my actual CPA actually writes books and does evaluations on both sides of the table, buyers and owners. And because he knew my business, both my businesses inside and out, it cost me less than $2,000 for him to evaluate and say, this is what you're worth, this is the reason why, this is how many times earnings you should expect to receive from the sale of your company. And then the company, the private equity company is a large national, very well-known private equity company. As I said, they came back and said, this is what we're willing to offer you. And it was to the penny what I was told my company was worth.
Now, that's an anomaly. Being in this industry like myself, your company, and I'm going to talk to our studio audience out there, your company is worth what someone is willing to spend on it. There's no question about that.
That is true.
Being co-aligned with an evaluation and what they evaluate it at, you're going to be in the same alignment, of course. But you also have two businesses, and it was really fortunate. Did you have the foresight when you broke them off going, hey, 7 years ago, I'm going to separate ACRS from my business so that if I want to make a sale, I keep them very separate. Would you recommend that for business owners who have maybe multiple businesses under one entity? Would you recommend separating them?
My situation made a lot of sense because the company that bought Woodall and Broome is a national private investigative agency that has nothing to do with what ACRS was doing. So we broke it off into that own entity for a couple of reasons. Number one, for a lot of growth, which we thought we would be able to obtain. And that company was always intended at some point in time to sell. Now, I sold that company 2 months ago. We had another company that's a $100 million a year business that's in the workers' comp arena, in healthcare arena, worker comp arena, but doesn't do what we do. So they came to us back in August and said, look, you're the division that we need in our company, and you've got the best reputation in the industry for a smaller business. We would like to talk to you about a possible merger. Same thing happened. I went to my CPA because this is what your company's worth. And they're also owned by private equity and came back to us. And again, to the penny, we got exactly what my CPA said the company was worth. So without using a broker on either time.
First question, it seems like you're clearing house. You've sold two businesses, of course.
Yeah.
Are your wife and kids still around, or did they get sold?
No. So far, it's funny. Sometimes tragic accidents change things in relationships. And the worst thing that's ever happened in my entire life was this accident. But it also turned out to be one of the best things from a family standpoint because everybody struggles. My wife and I have been together for over 30 years. And my kids are in their late 20s, and it changed every aspect of my family life for the better. Not every aspect. It changed everything in my family for the better because you almost lose an important member of the family. It kind of changes your perspective on things.
So if I look into your mug there, the cup is going to be half full. Is that accurate?
My cup's always been half full, but it's a little bit closer to the top now.
I like it. Well done. Well, so here's a big one because I've known you for a long time, and
yes.
Running the businesses you've run, as most entrepreneurs and business owners, they're not used to really taking instruction from other people. They're used to working as a team and leading the charge. What's it like working for somebody else now?
So I agreed to stay with Woodall and Broome for a year running the business. And I will tell you, it wasn't that big of a deal. They let me stay and run things. I've changed my status with the company now. At the past 2 months, I've agreed to work 5 to 7 hours a week. But they are now starting to make some changes, and some I agree with, and some I struggle with a little bit, no longer being in charge. But I think overall, I think they're making right decisions, and I'm not the owner anymore. You have to understand that when you decide to sell.
So what do you do with those decisions that you struggle with? Does it shorten the length of time you want to be there? Do you address it? What recommendations for owners that have sold their business, looking for it? Just some pre-warnings that, hey, these are some of the challenges I'm running into, and things you can do to thwart that, or just accept it?
So I would say two things. Number one, if you feel strongly about it, maybe approach it in the right manner with the new owners. And if that doesn't work, then you just bite your tongue.
Bite your tongue. Okay, I know you can do that. I've seen you do that. You've also been married for 30 years, so you have a lot of experience with that. Yeah. So what's itching next for you, Scott? I mean, you've gone through this transition. You've completely gone through the journey and the roadmap. You've come out the other side. Is that it for you? Are you sailing off into the sunset, or are you doing another venture? No, I have no interest at all in doing another venture. I'm 57, and this was the decision, it's time to retire. I've retired, and I have no interest in going back becoming an entrepreneur ever again. So another question, and it just sparked me. So how long do you plan on staying at these organizations? Is that open for discussion? Do you have a map? And that's what a lot of owners that sell their business want to know. Is it mapped out for a year, 2, 3? Do you have flexibility to leave when you want? How flexible is that post-transaction experience?
So with Woodall Broome, I agreed to stay for a year, completely running everything. That year was up 2 months ago. I've agreed to stay on for another year, but working 5 to 7 hours a week. And with ACRS, I'm not working for them. They sold the business. I got my money. I'm staying during the transition of merging operations, but I'm not an employee and I will not be staying with the company.
Scott, my gosh, I've got a ton of information from you. I'm learning from you, and I know our audiences as well. Any final words of wisdom for you for entrepreneurs that say, I might be coming up on a time where I might want to consider selling my business. You did the whole transaction yourself, and you talk about that. Paying 25 or 30%, that's a no-no, of course. But what recommendations do you have for people that want to consider this?
I think I will say 2 things. First of all, you have to understand the reason why you're selling. Is it selling to make your money up front and you're younger in age and you want to start another business? Fantastic. Are you at the stage of retirement and can you live off of the money? If you're using a broker, they're taking money. If you're not using a broker, remember you got high taxes to pay. Can you live off of that and you're ready to sail into the sunset? I will say one thing, the most difficult part in both of these sales was the due diligence. If you do not have your company in line, if you don't have your data in line, you don't have your finances in line, the hardest part is once a year when we get a certain age, we should go for a physical. Imagine a 4-month physical of every single inch of your body, top to bottom, day in and day out. That's what due diligence is.
And how long does that last? And you're
right.
It
was about a 4-month period of time.
Getting an offer is fun and easy. It's a very simple, called an LOI, letter of intent or indication of interest.
Yes.
But the due diligence is that examination.
Yes.
How long can that take and how painful is that?
I was very fortunate to where, number one, through Woodall and Broome, I had my ducks in a row. Selling ACRS, which was 2 months ago, I'd already been through this one time before, but I still had my ducks in a row. And it is still a nightmare. And with both companies, it was about a 4-month process, and every day submitting data, resubmitting data, because not only does the company or the PE want it, but then their attorneys get involved and they want a duplication of everything. It is an absolute living nightmare, especially if you don't have your data available and you don't have your ducks in a row. Because if you do not, the deal's not going to happen.
And you're exactly right. For listeners out there, it's true. Just because you get a letter of intent and an interest and an offer, and you start going through due diligence, more times than not, the deal does not cross the finish line, whether it be the firm not wanting to buy you, finding information out, or even the funding, whether it be self-funded or through a bank. That doesn't happen. So Scott, congratulations to you for your success. My gosh, selling not just 1, 2 businesses, and more importantly, sitting here today when after that catastrophic accident you made it through, you look like $1 million.
Appreciate that.
Even for 57 years old, you look like $1 million. I'm catching you very, very soon.
Thank you.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thanks so much for watching this show. I hope it was insightful. My name is Lee Heisman, and stay tuned next week for another episode of The Roadmap, exclusively here at ASBN.com.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Lee Heisman. This has been a JBF Business Media production.